The wait is over. Judas Priest has just released one of the most anticipated albums of 2024. So now the question is, did this exceed expectations? Did this meet expectations? Or was this a complete cluster? Find out next. Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to a very special edition of the Metal Dude Abides. Today, we're going to be reviewing the latest album from Judas Priest, their 19th studio album, Invincible Shield. I have been waiting for this album for months. Judas Priest did a really good job of putting out some sneak preview singles way back into 2023 in anticipation of this great day. And let me tell you, you don't have to wait to the end to know how I feel about this album. I absolutely love it. It is incredible that Judas Priest is still putting out this kind of high quality music now into their 70s. However, most of our album reviews we've done on this channel have been a track-by-track breakdown of the album. But because this album has 14 songs on the deluxe edition, which is the edition we will be reviewing, I've decided to break it up into sections of the album so we're not here for, longer than the album itself. So with that being said, let's go through the sections of this album and let you know what you're in for. I think one word best describes the beginning of this album, and that word is speed. This album starts out blazing fast. The first song on the album is also the first single they released way back in 2023. Panic Attack is the first song. And interestingly enough, it has kind of a slower, for this album, synth guitar intro that goes about 40 seconds. Just kind of a synth guitar intro, and then the song kicks in. Let me just say, Halford has never sounded better. He goes ripping through this song. That's followed by one of my favorite tracks on the entire album, The Serpent and the King. Because Panic Attack is a pretty fast song. And then The Serpent and the King goes even faster, even heavier. Great, catchy chorus. Speed upon speed. It is a surprise when you get an album and you listen to Panic Attack and you go, wow, this is going fast. And then the second song goes even faster. And then that's followed up by the title track, Invincible Shield. Maybe not quite as fast as The Serpent and the King, but still really fast, really heavy. So this album, these first three tracks, if you're a fan of metal, 80s metal that goes really fast, the beginning of this album is for you. But they're about to change it up just a tad. After that blazing start, Judas Priest slows it down a little bit and gets a little groovier, but just as heavy. One of my favorite songs on the album, maybe my favorite song on the entire album, Devil in Disguise, is so crunchy, so heavy. And it's a needed change of pace because, like I said, the first three songs are just going. This is going to get a little groovier, a little crunchier. That's followed up by Gates of Hell, which is similarly groovy and crunchy. I really like this section of the album. It continues the heaviness, but it changes the pace up a little bit. And this section then leads to another shift in gears in the next section of the album. Now, after going super fast out of the gates and then slowing it down, but making a nice, heavy, crunchy section of the album, the band makes a decision here to lighten it up with Crown of Horns. Now, when they put out this single, I wasn't really a fan of this song. Didn't like it much at all, to tell you the truth. But the way they placed it in the album has made me change my mind a little bit on this song. It's still my least favorite song on the album, don't get me wrong, but it's really an okay break right here. Because again, we've been heavy, heavy, heavy. Now we're going to lighten it up just a tad. I like it. I think the listener needs a little bit of a break. I think we need to change the pace up a bit, and this song performs that act perfectly. I also want to start talking about a few members of the band. And in this case, even though this is a lighter song, even though this is not one of my favorite songs, I do have to do a shout out at this point to Richie Faulkner, because he has a beautiful solo in this song that really kind of, if that solo is not in there, I probably would still go ahead and say this is a terrible song, but the solo saves it. And I just want to say, Richie Faulkner has been such a tremendous addition to Judas Priest. Maybe people that are more casual Judas Priest, they know of KK Downing's time in the band, but Richie Faulkner has been just as good as KK. And while I miss KK and I love the stuff he's doing with KK's Priest, we got to give some love to Richie Faulkner. What a great guitarist. The guitars on this album, between him and Glenn Tipton, are some of the best guitars that Judas Priest has had in a long while. So shout out here to Richie Faulkner. Shout out here to Glenn Tipton. I am so glad to see you on the album. Recently they did some live shows out in California and he was able to join them on stage. Does a heart really good. Best wishes, of course, to Glenn, battling through his Parkinson's syndrome. Love the guitars on this. Glad Glenn was part of it. And just want to shout out again to Richie Faulkner. What a fantastic guitarist. What a great selection by the band to bring in. All around kudos to everybody. But after this little break, after Judas Priest lightens it up, they return to full throttle in the next section. The next song is the heaviest song on the album, in my opinion, as God Is My Witness. We talked about the great guitars on this album. Let's talk about Scott Travis on drums for a bit. My. Scott Travis has been the best addition to Judas Priest in decades. He took the Judas Priest sound, which was heavy, but put that thunder underneath all that lightning. And I'll be honest, since Scott Travis has been in the band, it just seems like they sound so much heavier than they did from previous drummers. And his drumming on this, again, back to a very fast song, but there's the thunder in the background. Great drums on this song. Again, the heaviest song on the album, maybe the heaviest song they've done in a while. I really love this song. One of my favorites on the album, but I think the next song is technically my favorite. We are in a stretch of the album that is my absolute favorite, and here is my absolute favorite song on the album. It was the second single that they released, and the first video that they released, Trial by Fire. This song, the minute I heard it, is when I really got excited about this new album. Because while I liked Panic Attack, I love Trial by Fire. Little heavier and catchy. This is kind of that great combination. We've got fast songs, we've got heavy songs, we've got groovy songs. This song has a very heavy aura around it and has the catchiest melody, hook, riff in the entire album. Love this song. Its placement here is perfect, right in this sweet stretch of songs that's coming out. After they lightened it up a bit, they come back with a vengeance. So, favorite song on the album, Trial by Fire. But the next stretch of songs is also among my favorites. The last song, Trial by Fire, takes the album in a kind of a darker, moodier place, and it sets up perfectly for the haunting, the creepy, the definitely darker escape from reality. This is probably my second favorite song on the album. It starts out really haunting and creepy, and then just breaks into the great, fast Judas Priest type of song. And that's followed by Sons of Thunder, which is another banger, another fast one. One of the things that I have to say here is that Rob Halford, we haven't really talked about Rob yet on this album. We've talked about Richie, we've talked about Scott. Let's start talking about Rob a little bit, because the dude is 72 years old, and he is bringing some of the best vocals I've ever heard. We talk about this a lot, especially with these classic bands that come out of the 70s and 80s. And one of the things that's really hard to do is the vocalist to be able to keep up and hit the kind of notes that they were hitting 20, 30 years later. I don't know how Halford's doing it. He's found the fountain of youth somewhere. He's hidden it from everyone else, because nobody can sing like Halford in their prime, let alone in their 70s. So shout out to Rob here. If you are a fan of Rob Halford's vocals, you are not going to be disappointed on this album. In fact, I think it's, there was a stretch there where his vocals started to, maybe get like he was starting to have to approach things a little bit differently. And I don't know what's happened. It just seems like he's back to when he was 20. It's amazing. So this is a great stretch of the album. From the heaviest, this 4-song stretch is heavy, it's catchy, and great vocals from Halford. So this is probably my favorite stretch in the entire album. If you want to hear the best of this album, these 4 songs is where I would send you. But it's going to close strong as well. So we come out of the darkest, heaviest part of the album to a little bit of lighter fare. Giants in the Sky is a tribute to many of the rockers that went before them, and Fight for Your Life, which is almost an inspirational song, really catchy, but a little bit lighter than what we've just experienced. These songs are great. Giants in the Sky even has one of my favorite tropes in all of heavy metal. It seems like I've been seeing this a lot more lately, where we get into even a little bit of Spanish acoustical guitar kind of sound. Really good stuff. And again, after being in a really heavy, dark section of the album, it really works that all of a sudden, again, we're going to lighten it up. We're almost going to be uplifting and upbeat for a couple of songs. But don't let that fool you, because then they go right back to a very heavy, dark song, Vicious Circle. This is back to heavy, it's back to dark, it's back to crunchy. I love Vicious Circle, and I think it's an excellent way to close an album. Unfortunately, that is not where they close the album. All right. I guess you can't be a music critic without finding something to criticize on an album. The last song on the album is called The Lodger. In and of itself, it's a fine song, but it is a weird way to end an album. Vicious Circle is heavy and dark and crunchy. That's where I would have ended it. To follow it up then with The Lodger, it really is a bit of a jarring song, and it's not really a great album closer. I would say that while it's a fine song in and of itself, it's meant to be more melodic and creepy and dark, but I don't know. It's not how I would want to leave the audience. I would have slipped this in, maybe even when we're going from that really heavy, dark, creepy period that runs from As God Is My Witness through Sons of Thunder. Try to say that 3 times fast. Maybe The Lodger would go right there, and then you'd get that uplifting, and then finish with vicious circle. That's how I'd have done it. But, Judas Priest has been around a lot longer than I have. And this is really nitpicky stuff because, again, this album is fantastic from start to finish. And since we are now finished with it, let's talk about my closing thoughts. What can you say? This album is astounding. Not just because it's great from start to finish, but because Judas Priest has been around for over 50 years and are still putting out tremendous music. This feels like the energy of a band just getting started, making their way out into the metal world, not a veteran band that has nothing left to prove. They experiment on this album. It's not the same album that they've done over and over again, as witnessed by, some of the synth guitars, some of the more crunchy parts of the album. Even though I'd criticized it, The Lodger, a very different song for Judas Priest as well. So this is a band that's still experimenting, making the music seem fresh, making them seem so much younger. This is not like, let's go out and do Screaming for Vengeance for the 15th time. A lot of bands that have nothing to prove and have that great fan base kind of just play it safe, copy the formula. Judas Priest shows a lot here by not only putting out a fantastic album, but also mixing it up and making it sound newer. Rob Halford defies description at this point when you start thinking about a 72-year-old who's hitting high notes like Rob is effortlessly. It's amazing. We talked about the great guitar work from Glenn Tipton and Richie Faulkner. And then, again, I can't say enough about what Scott Travis has done for this band. They sound fantastic. I am desperately waiting now to hear this album being played live when Judas Priest comes back through. Looking forward to that tour that I'm hoping will be hot on the heels of this album. Now, you may ask yourself, okay, great, you love the album. Where does it rank in the Judas Priest discography? Out of the 19 albums, is this top 10? Is this at the bottom? Where would you rank this? Well, you're going to have to wait a week, but only a week, because next week, as part of this Judas Priest celebration, we're going to do the entire Judas Priest studio discography, 1 through 19, the best to the worst, and we'll see where Invincible Shield ends up. But until then, you don't want to miss this content, so go ahead, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and get notified so that when we put out that discography, you'll be the first to know about it. We really appreciate your support on this channel, and we're looking forward to seeing you next week. And if you want to join us live, Tuesdays, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we'll be doing the entire Judas Priest discography. It will be fantastic. In the meantime, this is the Metal Dude signing off. As always, take care.